When politics of change, real change, happens in the streets.
There's no reason that we don't talk about socialism as the only answer.
And the ones at every single protest say, "Hell yeah!"
Show me what democracy looks like.
We are the Party for Socialism and Liberation.
Hey, I'm Mustafa. I'm part of the Houston branch of the PSL.
And I'm Zach. I'm also with the Houston branch of the Party for Socialism and Liberation.
We are the Party of Socialism and Liberation, or as most of us know us as PSL. What we fight for and who we are is a socialist party that stands to end all oppression and to liberate all the repressed minorities here in the United States, the heart of darkness, the empire, and all around the world. What we do on a regular basis, we hold study groups where we try to educate our neighbors, educate others about how things actually are, to try to sway people away from mainstream media and all the lies or the invented reality that we're constantly fed. We also are always planning direct actions to stand up for what is right. For example, back last year in January, we led a direct action against the war in Iran. And these are only some of the kinds of things that we do as a party. Otherwise, we also are going to be working with communities here in Houston, and as well as we are in all of our branches around the United States, to get together, organize them, and provide mutual aid, so that way we can provide a network and connections that allow us to disconnect from the state so we can rely on each other instead of anyone else. Zach, how did Houston start?
So the Houston branch of the PSL first started with some at-large members. I am one of the original at-large membership. We came together and we were able to formulate a pre-branch. And over time, we started implementing study groups. We started implementing regular outreach sessions and just really upping different ways to talk to people, talk to the masses, talk to like-minded individuals. And it was rough. I'm going to be honest with you. It was a really rough start for us because everyone knows in Houston we are so vast, we are so large. It is hard to get people together. When you go 45 minutes in any direction, you're still in Houston.
Yeah.
So making the branch in and of itself and what it is now was a lot of hard work and a dedicated cadre that we do have within the Houston branch. Now we're able to do things like this, the webinar. We're able to, do direct actions, be involved in mutual aid, form coalitions. So, Houston started from the bottom and then built its way up to being something that represents what the PSL is all about.
Yeah. And it's been quite a journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the reason why we're here today is we're trying to get our name out there, trying to meet you guys. So to start with that, we're going to be asking ourselves this question and asking you guys the question, how are you radicalized? And the first person that we have today is going to be Joy.
Hi everyone, this is Joy with the Houston PSL, and I'm also here to tell you how I was radicalized today. So I was a tiger child growing up. I was raised with tiger parenting. This is a term coined to describe the very specific style of helicopter parenting used by the so-called model minority on their children to pressure them to succeed under meritocracy. I was an honor roll student, a competitive pianist, and involved in many extracurricular activities. But the one subject I really always hated, was history. I had zero interest in learning anything about history, and it wasn't until I became a socialist that I realized this was because I had been taught revisionist white supremacist history my whole life. In college, I was at a demonstration at the Capitol in Austin to protest Texas Senate Bill 5. Which would have shut down all but a few abortion clinics in all of Texas. This means that impoverished women in remote areas of Texas, especially West Texas, would not be able to access abortion without driving for several hours. As I had gone through an abortion myself, this issue was deeply important to me. this was my first political experience because although I had always been pretty progressively minded, I hadn't yet managed to put together the contradictions yet. Here, the contradiction was that Obama, who was president at the time, had promised change, and yet he had done nothing to stop this from happening. And other things didn't add up, like my parents had told me about growing up in communist China, how it was repressive and authoritarian, and I'm sure many diaspora leftists have a similar story. But here there is abundant state violence, repression of speech, rampant racism and misogyny, and most importantly, there's a long, long history of this. In fact, this is what the US was founded on. The US was founded on such ideals, and therefore such ideals will not cease to exist until they are dismantled by the working class. It is the will of the masses realizing that we deserve better than this, that we have power in our numbers. It is literally righteous and compassionate to be a socialist and oppose capitalism, racism, and imperialism. Then, in 2016, when Trump was elected, sending the country into a political frenzy, the likes of which we hadn't seen in decades, I was in rehab. And I was in rehab with mostly black, brown, and impoverished people from all different walks of life. And together we watched the mask come off of white supremacy. Their input and support impacted me greatly. We had a workbook for self-reflection that borrowed much literature from the Alcoholics Anonymous workbook, and one of the prompts was, what was your higher power? So I had never been raised with much religion or spirituality in my life, and I really struggled to answer this question. But finally, I realized that in my peers, I had discovered a power that I respected more than anything in the world, and that is the power of solidarity. The power I felt knowing that I was sitting in a clinic full of people who walked different paths of life from me, and yet we were still here together. The power of knowing that uniting in struggle makes us, the people, strong, that we have more in common than in differences. So I began to wonder, how does change happen? How do people make change happen, rather? So I began to study historical change, which is always made by the grievances of the common people. That is, we've seen this past year all sorts of demographics in what we as a society now call essential workers, unite with activists. Our grievances are piling up until we're collectively conscious of our oppression and organizing for our freedom. And that's how I found the PSL. That's our central goal, to raise others' consciousness and organize for our collective freedom. The past few years with the PSL have been so amazingly productive. I can't help feeling optimistic about our success because I've seen the lessons of history in action here. The power of even a small group of dedicated comrades is unreal. We are going to win. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Joy, so much. And yeah, I think for you guys, and especially for me, there's a lot there to relate to. I grew up in a really similar situation. What was it like for you?
So for me, growing up, I did not have much solidarity at all. So growing up and, coming to college, and then eventually graduating and joining the PSL was when I found my solidarity. And so, that was the first time I've actually heard Joy say that higher power, and that honestly I'm just connecting to it right now. And the fact that, because I also am not religious, so having that idea of a higher power being the solidarity among the workers is something that really clicks with me because I did not have that growing up.
Yeah, I think that was really similar for me too. I grew up in a really strongly Muslim household, and it wasn't until the late end of middle school that I started really questioning things.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I did know and was very sure of was me and my family were really poor. And the one thing was most of my friends though were really rich, so I was always really conscious of that.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until becoming part of PSL, really being able to see how other people, parts of these groups actually felt and what were like. I was like, wow, okay, there are others like me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to have another speaker tell us how he was radicalized. So we're going to now introduce Mike.
Hey all, I'm Mike's in the house. I'm with the Party for Socialism and Liberation's Houston branch. So when I was first told I'd be speaking on how I was radicalized, it was a bit overwhelming. To ask anyone this question is to ask them in a lot of respects to kind of just give an autobiography. You see, our everyday experiences and these lives we live, they have a direct impact on the way we view the world, and I'm no different than anyone else in this respect. I remember sitting in my living room reading. I've always been really into books. And I remember my mom was on the phone and she was talking to her friend and telling them how she couldn't believe my dad had voted Republican. What does he think? She said, that we're rich. And that was an important moment, I feel like, because that was the first time I really thought of economics and politics as being kind of connected. And it's something that continues to shape the way that I move through the world, but I think at the time it was something a lot simpler. Back then, all it meant was, okay, well, the Republicans are for the rich people and the Democrats are the party of the working class. And that was that followed me throughout my life into high school when I suddenly heard of this old man from New York running for president. Like many comrades in the branch, the Sanders campaign had an immense impact on my politics. Hearing people, say ideas such as free healthcare and ending all these foreign wars and free education, that these are communist ideas, it really made me wonder, well, let me look into communism. And so a group of friends and I in high school had read the manifesto just out of curiosity, and I think that only deepened my interest in this movement and in these ideas. And so eventually seeing kind of the failures and the sabotage and contradictions that eventually befell the movement led by Sanders, that was the first time I was really able to see that the Democratic Party is not on our side, that there isn't one party for the rich and one party for the poor. Instead, one party is openly fascist and the other one kind of hides behind this mask of representation and equality, but both do everything they can to continue a system that literally crushes people and their hopes and their dreams. And so it was after that realization that it was really hard to approach politics or anything really without this really nihilistic worldview. I was lost in layer upon layer of cynicism, and it was really hard to find anything to really be optimistic in at all. It was around this time that someone asked me, as a Marxist, what political party I was in. And when I said I had no party, they recommended the PSL. When I joined, it became obvious I had a lot to learn, and I think I still do, but it matters. That's kind of okay now because I'm surrounded by so many knowledgeable people, and not only that, they're really dedicated to applying this knowledge to the real world and not just as a way of looking at the world, but as changing it. And it's in that way that, that really was what drew me to the PSL. It wasn't this party that kind of kept an unhappy membership in line with glittering promises that they never really fulfilled on, but it was across the country, not even in Houston, if you kind of look into any online research, is actively engaged in directly combating issues that affect not only me but everyone I love. Issues such as poverty, racism, imperialism, and all of these things that ultimately can flourish under capitalism. And so that's why it's an honor for me to really join this struggle, one that's being waged by our fraternal parties across the globe. The fight to end corruption, hunger, homelessness. This is one that we should all see ourselves in, because ultimately all of these struggles are connected and they're all one. As a working class Mexican man in the heart of the empire, the PSL has helped me understand that all colonized and working class people, LGBTQ folks, women, we all have to come together. And it's only then as a united front that we can present, a true alternative and a true difference to the status quo. And this is why we're going to win, too, because when so many sectors of society are suffering at once, when all of these ways are being blocked off to us, the only real option is to make our own way, and that's what we are doing here in the PSL. And this revolutionary optimism didn't find me overnight. It's something that kind of came to me throughout the years, just through all the outreach and the agitation that we are doing, all the work that we're doing in the streets, and it's seeing the party kind of grow bit by bit from that throughout the years. And I think that work is super important, and I think it's something you eventually join us in, so thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Mike is one of the at-large members that joined the PSL around the same time that I did. He holds a very special place in my heart, and this is also my first time hearing his story. What did you think about it?
Mike's story really hit home for me because I just felt a lot of what he was talking about. I also come from a POC family that had a lot of the same poor struggles as his. I just didn't find out about Marxism until later on in high school, so he just got the heads up on me.
Absolutely. So next we are going to have a message from Cole about our comrades in Denver and the campaign involving their struggle.
Hi, I'm Cole with the Houston branch for the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and I'm going to tell you a little bit today about our comrades in Denver. On September 17th, 2020, several of our Denver area comrades were arrested by Denver area police because of organizing large-scale peaceful protests demanding justice for Elijah McClain. Our comrades are facing multiple charges, some that have minimum sentences. It's very important that we continue to support our comrades in their fight. You can visit their socials, and the link below will take you to denverdefense.org, where you can learn more about our comrades, their stories, and how you can further support them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cole. In bringing up the Denver Defense, some people may be a little bit confused about what was the whole situation going on in Denver. So let me clarify a little bit. So as of last year, not too long ago, our Denver comrades created a direct action to protest the murder and call for the accountability for the murder of Elijah McClain, who was a 23-year-old, very young black working man. What happened was they organized an incredibly successful, incredibly large contingent to surround the Aurora police station up there. And the entire goal was to intimidate the police officers, however, only through a peaceful, collected protest. However, the police's response was a little more aggressive, if not in some ways arguably violent. After the protests had subsided and after everyone went home, a couple days later, the police showed up at the houses of our 3 leading comrades and arrested them on absurd charges such as the kidnapping of police officers. I know about you, Zach, but that's kind of crazy to me. Cops got guns. I would be shot before I think I could put handcuffs on a gun, on a police officer.
Absolutely.
All right, so it would really, really be a help for us if you guys visited the Denver Defense website that was suggested to you by Cole and did whatever you could to help out the situation, to help us dismiss the charges against our 3 Denver comrades. It would be a lot of help and we'd really appreciate it. So, you know, we've been talking and hearing everyone else talk about how they're radicalized, and you know, I'm getting a little bit jealous. How about you? You want to talk about us now?
Absolutely, I would love to talk.
How are you radicalized, Zach?
All right. So, my first experience on, communism's kind of cool was actually in a 6th grade Bible study, or like a Bible class. And my teacher, who looking back was probably a communist, had us, what he liked to do was have us have a Bible story and then like a secular like piece of theory or philosophy, and we put it together and we decide how that is interpreted, you know, in a way to kind of combat like secular ideology. You know, that was the purpose of the Bible class. And so the story that was given to us was Jesus turning the 5 loaves and the 2 fish into a meal for 5,000, and then it was the phrase "the haves to the have-nots." And so we were told to decide what the phrase meant to us, and then we had to present like a 4-sentence paragraph. And basically this teacher left 6th graders to their own devices for like 45 minutes, and we talked about this for actually a really long time. We were very diligent thinking about it, and you know, I'll never forget when we told Mr. D that we thought, yeah, this is absolutely, you know, Jesus's teaching, you know, give from, you know, that guy had the 5 loaves and 2 fish, and then we created meals for the have-nots, for the 5,000. And my teacher very plainly just goes, well, that's just communism. With absolutely no explanation. Well, that's just communism. The rest of the class is just a blur for me. I cannot remember anything that happened after that because, you know, I grew up in a conservative Christian, you know, white family that really, you know, Red Scare was like a big deal. You know, my parents hate communism. They absolutely, you know, love, you know, this like bourgeois Christian, like white America. They, you know, they are those kind of conservatives. And so, but luckily for me, I was very unsupervised. So I had like a lot of time on my hands to really like grow myself politically.
Yeah.
So later on in high school, I was very lucky to be able to take a logic course, and not logic in the sense of math, but logic in the sense of theory, where again I was introduced to Marx's haves to the have-nots, which further deepened my interest in Marxism. So unfortunately, yet fortunately, I was a young queer college kid, and I was homeless on and off throughout my last years of college. I had a very unstable household. compounded with crushing academic pressure to succeed, with no assistance from my family for the most part, no assistance from the government. I couldn't get any sort of funding because I was under the age of 26, though I've been on my own since about 17, 18 years old. My parents weren't paying for my housing, they weren't paying for my food, you know, and so I was under this great pressure of, do I find a household and my only options were households of abuse, or do I get my, you know, do I finish my degree so that I can make a better life for myself? So naturally, I was like, for me, naturally, this is the kind of person I am. I was like, yeah, I'll couch surf and I'll live in my station wagon. Totally cool. And so, you know, another thing that helped with my radicalization along with being homeless is that I am also a gay transgender man. I came out as transgender when I was 8 years old. I was, you know, I'm a childhood trans baby, and so one of the things is that I'm very bad at being in the closet. Horrible. I am very much out there. People know what I am. I'm not very good at hiding it, and so that got a lot of pushback from my family, but also my friends. You know, I grew up in conservative Texas. I'm Houston born and raised. You know, we may be a blue city and a red state, but there was a lot of pushback. I had pushback from the healthcare system, along with, you know, abuse from like partners and things like that, and then along with just you know, the trans homeless gay youth, you know, that whole story that we know, especially in Houston. And so in college was when gay marriage was legalized in the United States, and so that really, you know, pushed me to really learn more about the Stonewall riots and what they actually were, because I wasn't a very online person, because I'd been poor for so long, so I wasn't introduced to leftism online. Luckily, at that time that gay marriage was legalized, I was in a household of a bunch of you know, queer POC leftists, and so I was radicalized by them, you know, learning about, you know, how the system was broken. I mean, I knew the system was broken, but I didn't realize that there was an option other than capitalism, because you're not taught that. You're not taught that there is an option. So to meet these people, and I'm just so lucky that I got to meet them and then learn the root cause of all of my specific oppressions. And then I've always had a very big heart for people struggling. And so to see that my struggle is rooted in capitalism, which is rooted in struggle for other people, I knew that I needed to do something about it. And so I ended up, you know, outside of my desperate situation, with my friends that I lived with, along with just the veil being lifted, I was able to find the PSL. You know, I found my place here very quickly. I was with Mike, I was with a few other comrades. You know, we all clicked very well, and we have been, you know, together ever since. And then I was a baby communist, and the PSL really took me under their wing. You know, specifically like our national people took me under their wing and educated me and created the organizer that I am today, because I started off literally like knowing nothing, because I didn't have access to the books. I didn't have access to internet for a lot of the times. So to be able to be taught while being like grown into this organizer was something that, you know, kept me from becoming somebody who would be a doomer or complacent, into somebody with revolutionary optimism. You know, especially in a city like Houston, Texas, our activism scene is very subdued here, and it has been for so long. You know, in 2020 we saw like a surge of activism in Houston, and it has carried on into 2021. And so I found my resolve over the years with the PSL. I know the fight is never going to be over for me. I know that I am in the struggle, and we are not free until we are all free. And I refuse to stop until my people, the people abroad, and the planet is saved.
Damn right, comrade. Damn right. Yeah. I can't say how much I've heard those stories and just how tough that is. But you got here. and you're a damn good organizer at that.
Thank you so much.
But I'm sorry I had to cost you all that, but you're here now.
Absolutely. So tell me your story. I want to know.
So, I feel like mine started before I was even born. So, for most of us kids who were born from the womb of imperialism, so to speak, right? I feel like it's impossible not to become radicalized early on in your life. You know, you carry this pain, you carry all the effects of the blood-soiled earth of your motherland, and from the second you're conceived, it's there. And so, like being born, being radicalized is just as much of a choice.
Mm-hmm.
So, strangely enough, I was born in Auckland, New Zealand. A settler colonial state in its own right? A very strange place to be born an Arab, let alone an Iraqi refugee. My parents emigrated from Iraq when the reign of Saddam Hussein continued to get worse and worse as it became more volatile, and the terrorism was rampant. You got Al-Qaeda, and then, recently we got ISIS and everything. It was rampant, and the infrastructure there, economic, political, was in shambles. It wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
But, of course, I didn't know that at the time. So, it was that, as a kid, every morning I would go and me and my family would have breakfast together, and we'd all watch the same TV, of course. We only had one in the living room.
Mm-hmm.
And our parents picked what we watched. And every day, so in the mornings, we'd be watching Iraqi news or Al Jazeera, and I'd be seeing and watching along with my parents about what was going on in the Middle East. And I can't say that there was a single day that I didn't see that there was some bombing, some sort of drone strike, or some sort of a violent act by some alleged terrorist almost every single day. And I was a kid, so I didn't know what a terrorist really was, aside from just this violent dude who bombed stuff, right? All I knew and could understand was that people in my country, my people, Iraqis, were hurting each other, and they were being violent and angry. No one told me why. So for years and years, all that my logic at that age could understand was that I came from a violent people, and I was just lucky to escape them. Over the course of the next 18 years of my life, I continued to grow up in a family that struggled to find work, received eviction letters almost every single month, and had to find change in like the little cracks in your couch just to buy bread. Just so we could make it the next day, get to school that next morning. And it was during this time that me being an older brother of three total kids, and kind of being the only ones aware of what was going on with my family, because my mom only talked to me and kind of kept it away from my other two brothers. School was my safe haven. Education was the one thing that really mattered to me, and for some reason, I just knew that education was what was going to get me out of that place, that being poor, the chain of poverty, right? And education did do that, in a matter of speaking. But it wasn't my university professors who showed me, it wasn't high school, it was Marx. Odd as it was, I had one of my high school teachers give us the Communist Manifesto for a world history class as reading material, along with Machiavelli and everything, to keep it the same, to keep it leveled, right? And reading the manifesto was the first time I had ever heard of someone who advocated for poor people.
Yeah.
Right? And not in a way like Mother Teresa, not in a give money to the poor type of way, but actually like change the world type of way. The manifesto also told me that, unlike what I had been conditioned to and browbeaten to believe by American history teachers, all of them mostly white in my life, or ones that had really poor education at that, that poverty wasn't a consequence of being dumb or incompetent. It wasn't because you didn't know how to be rich or how to invest your money. It was because you were literally meant to be by the system that we lived in, right? All the tools were against us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when things began to click for me. I wasn't a wretch. I wasn't this person that was born to be poor. I wasn't born out of born out of violence to become only part of it, right? I was a victim. I was a victim of this system that viewed my people as second class and taught us that violence was the only language that the American plutocrats speak of when taking what they crave. That system was called capitalism, right? Entering into undergrad, I majored in philosophy. That was the one course, that one subject that just really spoke to me. But even at the time, though, ironically, I wanted to go into medicine. To become a doctor of some sort. I don't know, I was thinking psychiatrist, I was thinking neurosurgeon, I wasn't sure yet. Ultimately, what I wanted to do was dependent on one thing: making some sort of systemic change. You could even say revolutionizing something. Eventually, I was turned off to the world of medicine, though. It didn't fit well into my criteria. And so it soon shifted. I wanted to do law instead. It wasn't until my senior year of college that I began to actually dig deeper and do a little more introspection until where I stood politically, ideologically. A lot of the philosophy that I had been studying and that spoke to me during my studies were really idealistic, right? They didn't have any concrete action to them. Like, I read Kant, I loved him, but I didn't really know what to do tomorrow, right? What am I going to do tomorrow based on Kant's categorical imperative? It was that year that I began to be exposed to Marxist-Leninist thought, surprisingly, through social media, believe it or not. And learning more about it and learning about materialism, I started using that as my lens for the world. And the pieces started falling into place. I started looking at myself and what I believed in and was like, wow, you really believe in a bunch of fantasies and utopian ideas. You are not going to change anything with what you think at the moment. And that also, the reason why I believed a lot of those things is because I was drowned with them throughout my high school education and throughout college especially, and my philosophy degree. But in the end, I needed something that was actionable. And that was Marxist-Leninism for me. That's what I needed at that point. But then after graduating, I was like, okay, well, I got all these great ideas. I got Marxist-Leninism. What do I do with that? Soon enough, I found the PSL. And becoming part of this party didn't only offer me the space to continue my study and learn more about it. It was also a place where I could put theory into practice, right? What some people would call praxis. And all that I'd been learning, all that I'd been reading, I was able to actually do it in person with comrades and learn how to do that and what to do. And I genuinely can't imagine my life today if I hadn't joined the party.
Absolutely. I remember when I first met you, we still had the remnants of the philosophy degree.
Yeah.
And like one of the first things we talked about was like Slomansky's like illusion of choice and all of that.
Yeah.
It was fun because like we clicked on like a philosophy level because that was one thing I thought I would end up majoring in, but I went into medicine instead. So, but like I love your story. Because like specifically like where you have immigrated from is it's so different than any other story that I've ever heard. And also what I really like is that we both like shared this desire for action, and just seeing you grow, you know, over the past year, seeing you grow as a comrade, I have seen that, you know, you do want to put your theory into action, and you do it well. And that's what the PSL is all about. We're not a bunch of, you know, nerds hanging out together and just talking. You know, talking is well and good, and there is a time to talk, but we need action. And, you know, we are people of action, and it's just something that, you know, Houston specifically is like a culture that we have tried to create within our branch.
Yeah, no. You know, I feel like that's something that we both just had gnawing at the bottom of our hearts, was this like hunger for praxis, right?
Yeah.
We grew up with all these super cool ideas, right? You know, we're both philosophy nerds, we both enjoy it, and you know, there's always this beauty, but it's mainly aesthetics. You just like it because it looks nice, it sounds nice. Mm-hmm. But nothing feels as good as being able to like go out there and actually change people's lives, and having the right ideas behind that. And I don't really see any other way of doing that aside from being in some sort of organization, being organized and organizing others. And you know, I think we're blessed to have that opportunity.
Absolutely.
So we want to thank you guys so much for listening to us, and hopefully that you guys had some things to also connect to. The last thing that I want to do before I sign off is I want to shout out, if you guys are interested in what we talked about here and you want to learn more about socialism, or you want to, get off your butt and actually get into the streets, I would highly suggest looking into Socialist Program by Brian Becker. It is a great podcast where he talks about all these recent issues. He talks about them from a socialist perspective. And if you're interested, if you've heard of Richard Wolff, he also guest stars at some points. And if you want an alternative news source, I would highly suggest Breakthrough News, which is hosted by Eugene Furrier and Monica Cruz.
If you want to see more from us or see more of what the Houston PSL branch is doing, you can follow us on Instagram at HoustonTXPSL, on Facebook as Houston PSL, and on Twitter also as HoustonTXPSL. We're going to have those links up here, and we will have them in the description. Thank you so much, Houston. Stay in the streets.
Hello, I'm Fernando with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and hit that bell to make sure you get all the additional content we're putting out. If you enjoyed this as well, you can make sure to click the links to my right to get more information from alternative media. You can check out BT News, Socialist Program, and if you'd like to help fund us directly, you can also check out our Cash App as well.